Hello and welcome to the Retirement Solutions, the podcast. I'm Ryan Thacker along with Tyson Thacker, my brother. Thanks so much for listening to us today. We know you have lots of different options out there, and we're just grateful that you're spending some time with us today. We have a great podcast today. We're going to be taking a deep dive on America's retirement crisis. And this is a big deal. This is not something that is meant to scare you. It's meant to just awaken you to what we're really looking at as far as a crisis. And we've been involved in helping families retire successfully now for 2.5 decades. And Tyson, it's amazing. I have a whole lot less hair.
So do I.
Now than when we started, and so do you. You got a little more hair than I do, but I think some of that hair loss could be because of this retirement crisis. I mean, it is, when we think about retirement, most people think about their investment portfolio, right? But let's talk, Tyson. We talk often about our dad's farm, where he grew up and where we would go in the summers and help bale hay, and we'd fish down in the creek that went below us, and we'd go chase deer and all kinds of things. It's just a really fun place to go visit grandma and grandpa. But the lessons that we learned as kids on the farm were really, really powerful. And so, Tyson, we talk a lot about water. Let's talk about some of the lessons that we learned from water on Dad's farm.
To set this up, so many people come into our office and the very first question they ask is, do we have enough money? Or am I going to run out of money in retirement? And it's a valid concern because when you consider that nearly half of all Americans are at risk of running out of money or going broke in retirement, it's a pretty startling thing for somebody to think to themselves, can I turn in my 2-week notice and forever walk out the door and retire forever and be okay?
Yep.
And it's not just about having a big nest egg, that number that so many people talk about. It's about having reliable sources of income. And that goes now into what we want to talk about with our dad. You mentioned, there was a stream behind our grandpa's farm. And Dad always taught us that you need to protect your water sources, that literally water becomes the way that our grandpa Thacker would be able to take care of all the animals, be able to take care of raising the crop that they had on their 40 acres, and being able to ensure that water was pure. And so I remember so well, Ryan, one weekend that Dad took us down. We normally a couple times a year in the fall and in the spring, we would go down. They called them the river bottoms because it was at the bottom of the property. And we would go and we'd have a bonfire, we'd have a hot dog roast, would throw some baked potatoes in the ashes, and we'd have a really fun time together as a family. But he also, I remember one time he would take us down to the stream, and he pointed out in the stream, there it was winding, it was beautiful, it was right up against the mountain. And he pointed out this animal carcass that was in the water. And then we hiked up to what they used to call on the farm the Big Spring, which was basically at the base of the mountain, and the water trickled outside just right there at the base, and it just came right out of the mountain. And Dad taught us the lesson that day of, this is where the source of the water comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were eating a sandwich together that day, he said, always protect this source. This is the most important source. If you drink water downstream where that carcass was, you're going to have impure water. And so you've got to be able to have the analogy here in your mind of protecting your water sources or your income sources in retirement as well. And that's really what we want to talk about today is how important income is in retirement. It's much more important than however much you've saved. It's about how you build this into income streams that becomes important, right?
Well, there's places in the world that water is just so abundant. I mean, you got too much water. And then there's places like Utah where water is scarce. And any good farmer knows that their land is worthless without a source of water.
Yeah,
If you got to water your crops, you've got to be able to have water for your animals. And so many people, a retirement is worthless without income. I mean, it is. It's so clear. There's so many just neat parallels with that. And Tyson, not only were we taught to not drink downstream, I think a lot of you are drinking downstream when it comes to who you're listening to for advice.
that's
If you're
right.
listening to somebody that talks about retirement and it's only about how much are your assets growing, grow, 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 and they're not talking about income. That's the importance of working with a fiduciary. Is a fiduciary is going to do a comprehensive plan, and I think we've gone way too far on just focusing on the investment side of retirement. And it's really easy when the stock market takes off and goes for a tear. And, post election here in 2024, when we're recording this, the stock market has been rising significantly. And one of the most overlooked areas of retirement planning is where is your source, where are the sources of your income going to come from in retirement? Tyson, that what's interesting about the farm as well, if we continue this water analogy, is there were different springs that would run all year long. Some of the springs ran in the spring and then they dried up as the snow melted. And then there were places where they could store water, the reservoirs. Right down from the farm was Deer Creek Reservoir. And, farmers built that so that they just didn't lose all the water as it was running down the river. They could store it. And then when things got dry, they could have a water source that they could replenish. And that's the powerful thing about today is we have all kinds of resources. And I think sometimes we overlook the lessons of the past. Our forefathers knew that that water was the lifeblood of how they were going to make income, how they were going to provide for their family. And today we just like to help remind you, when you think about retirement, you have to ask yourself the question, um, where are my reliable sources of income going to come from? One of those is Social Security. You may be one of the 16% of Americans that has a pension. That's another reliable source of income. You may have a couple rental real estate properties, or you may have a business that gives income streams. And, just like farmers, they're going to protect in arid Utah, in dry Utah, they protect the time that they can use the water and when their neighbor can use the water, right? Because they know that if they don't protect them, they're going to lose those water rights. So, Tyson, let's talk a little bit more about what are the challenges that we see with income for retirees? If you look at Social Security, you look at pensions, many pensions are underfunded. What are some of the challenges that we see with income streams when people come in and visit with us?
Yeah, let's start out with pensions, Ryan. I mean, the foundation we'll talk about is Social Security, but let's talk about pensions for just a second. Only 18% of anybody has a pension. You've got Social Security, and Social Security could go bankrupt in the next 10 years. You've got IRAs and 401ks. You may have real estate. There's all of these different income streams. You got money in the stock market. Um, those are all different income streams. So let's talk about each of the challenges in turn, and let's start with pensions. Because that 18% of Americans is getting smaller every single year. It's really boiling down to government pensions is what we're looking at. Whether somebody's working for the federal government or the state government, working
Yeah.
as a fireman, a teacher, whatever it may be. But the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation has warned that some people, because pensions are on the edge of being underfunded, they could see their benefits cut by up to 90%. Think about that. Pensions, even though there's only 18% of you who have them, they are going the way of the dodo bird. Every year there's going to be less and less that have a pension.
Tyson, I served a mission for my church. I spent time in Connecticut and Rhode Island, and Central Falls is a city that I lived in. I remember
Sure.
they hit the Wall Street Journal, not in a good way. Central Falls, Rhode Island, the way that they got rid of their financial issues for the city is they cut the pensions. They cut the pensions for their firefighters, their police officers, all of those hardworking people that had taken less pay during their careers in exchange for getting this pension. Well, how did they get out of bankruptcy? They slashed the pension benefits. And that's, when you have the pension guarantee fund that warns that some pensions could be cut by as much as 90%, that's 90, maybe that pension isn't as solid as you thought it was going to be in retirement, right? So this is a way that you need to dig in, take a look at your own pension benefits, and maybe you should consider a lump sum pension option where you can go and get that into an area that you can control rather than somebody that you can't control when you're 10, 15 years in retirement.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great thought, Ryan. And one of the fun things that we do is we look at it, every situation uniquely to you, and we can help you to figure that out. But having a pension go away is a scary thought to most people, and it really drives home that point of having diversified tributaries. Having money flow from different sources, and we recommend that you have at least three sources of income in retirement. So let's now go to the foundation of all of your income sources, which should be Social Security. The first thing you need to understand about Social Security is that for the majority of Americans, Social Security is the number one place that they're going to get the bulk of their retirement income. And so you've got to ensure that you understand where Social Security is. And I mentioned a few minutes ago that they're within 10 years of going bankrupt. We don't believe that Congress will allow it to go bankrupt, but there could be a lot of changes happen with Social Security. And for a lot of people, it's over a third of their income, even if it's not their biggest. And here's the hard part about Social Security is it's complex. There's 2,728 rules in the Social Security handbook. And, years ago, there was a study that was done by Forbes that said 96% of Americans get Social Security wrong. They take it in the wrong way and at the wrong time. But because of inflation and because of other things that have limited the ability for Social Security, for Americans to be able to get Social Security right, it actually is over $200,000 that could be at risk throughout your retirement life with just Social Security. And so making that wrong decision about how you claim your benefits really is a big deal. And we're really proud of the fact we've helped so many families make an informed decision about Social Security over our time in business, that over 2.5 decades, Ryan.
We've helped thousands of families prepare and plan for their retirement. And we can confidently say this from experience: it doesn't really matter how much you save for retirement. It's what you do with this money that really matters. If you've saved $1 million for retirement, for example, a comprehensive plan for your retirement could make 1 million act like 2 million, but it could also go the opposite direction. If you don't have a plan, you could have 2 million work like it was just 1 million. That's the kind of impact a comprehensive financial game plan could have on your retirement savings. Let's make sure you have the best retirement plan for your unique situation. It all starts with a free customized B.O.S. retirement blueprint. This process could help save tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes in retirement. Plus, you can discover the strategies for wringing every nickel out of your Social Security benefits and so much more. It's easy to get started with your free B.O.S. retirement blueprint. Just check out the description for this episode where it says, get your free B.O.S. retirement blueprint. You can text, call, or click on a link. That number to call is 800-769-7550. It's right here in the episode notes. A text, call, or click is all it takes to get started with your free B.O.S. retirement blueprint. That number again is 800-769-7550. Okay, so you have Social Security challenges, you have pension challenges. Let's talk about the other really big area of risk, and that's inflation.
Yes.
I mean, we've now experienced record inflation here recently. Before everyone thought it was a thing of the past. It was something that was going to only kill you in the 80s. And just to take you back in a time machine, one of our favorite quotes about inflation comes from Ronald Reagan when he said, "Inflation is as violent as a mugger." And I what does that mean? Well, it takes away your purchasing power. And let me just give you a personal example. So I have 4 sons, and my wife and I have been married for 28 years. We'll celebrate our 29th wedding anniversary here pretty soon. And when we got married, our our first married apartment, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, was $450 a month. Okay.
Right.
Now fast forward to 2024 at the time we're recording this. Two of my sons just got a townhouse that they're living in. This is a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. So it's got an extra bathroom.
Yep.
But the monthly payment, not including utilities, is $2,200 a month.
So
Okay.
crazy.
So in that 28-year time period, we've gone from $450 a month for pretty much the same thing to $2,200 a month. And I'm sitting here thinking as a dad, I'm like, holy cow, you know, holy cow. And, what do we learn? Well, our parents, when they were first married, their rent was $60 a month. So we went from 60 to 450 to now 2,200. Folks, if we're in math class, right? Continue the pattern. What's the pattern going to be? Well, 30 years from now, think of what your expenses are going to be. And when I say 30 years, someone's like, oh, I'm not going to live 30 years. Well, if you're 60 years old and you're married and you're healthy, there is a 50% chance that one or both of you are going to live into your 90s. Think about that for a second. 50% chance. So you very well may be paying those increased costs. So if you're spending $5,000 a month today at 60, and you fast forward and think about how much you're going to be spending 30 years from now, buckle up. It's going to get expensive. And that's where inflation is a powerful eroder of wealth.
Well, and let's use a couple of other clear examples, Ryan. Healthcare. Everybody knows how different healthcare looks during that same time period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, inflation numbers just came out today. And as of the time of this podcast recording, the inflation number is about 2.6, whereas healthcare costs are going up by about 7% at the same time period. And so that inflation is even worse with healthcare. It's also, you think about, let's just put some numbers to it for, Ryan, you mentioned 30 years down the road. Let's just put some numbers to it. If you've got $6,000 that you're living off of right now that you're going to go into retirement, down the road, it's going to more than double. So you're going to need at least $12,000 just to maintain the same standard of living. It's really a stark reminder that you've got to factor in inflation as far as how this works and what you're going to do in your income plan, because ignoring it could end up being the difference between living comfortably and scraping by. And that's why we want to share all of the pieces of income today and how this works and what the factors are, because it's more important to think about how many sources of income I have. How can I divide this up? It's not about how much you've saved. It's about ensuring that that income can keep up with inflation, can keep up with what you need in retirement.
Well, let's talk about how we approach this, Tyson, because I think this is helpful. As you're listening to this, you may be thinking, okay, how am I ever going to retire? I mean, I'm going to be on the permanent work plan. Well,
Right.
this is where planning and strategy comes in. So we recommend 3 sources of income during retirement. And if we just break this down on a simple level, stream number 1, we need income for today. Stream number 2, we need a pay raise in retirement for inflation.
Right.
Now you're going to get some help from that from Social Security because it has a cost of living adjustment on it. So that helps a little bit, but I can tell you after doing this for 2.5 decades, it's not going to keep up with inflation, right? And then there's the third income stream, which is going to be for your health care. This is where you need to start thinking about this today. How do I pay for my health care? And we love to build these plans. We love to create them And so you've got a strategy. It's not a hope. Hope is not a financial strategy. You've got an actual laid out plan and a strategy of where are these three sources of income going to come from? Going back to the water example on the farm, we know that there's going to be different sources of water throughout the year in a dry place like Utah, that the water dries up. So what do we need to do? We need to build a reservoir of money for later on. Some of the examples of that, like for healthcare, do you know that there are annuity products that have what they call healthcare doublers on them? What does that mean? Let's say you're getting $3,000 a month from an annuity. Well, the healthcare doubler says if you can't perform 2 of 6 daily living activities, they will double the income stream for a period of 5 years. Why 5 years? Because typically, if you can't perform 2 of 6 daily living activities, you're not going to live longer than 5 years. But think about this. That annuity goes from $3,000 a month to $6,000 a month. There's an extra $36,000 a year to help you plan and prepare for retirement. Well, a lot of people say, "Oh, I hate annuities," and so should you. Well, no one hates an income stream that doubles when they need it for healthcare, right?
Yeah.
These are some planning strategies that we can build well before this event ever happens to make sure that as you get to and through retirement, that you've got a plan and a strategy there to do that. Tyson, what are some of the other ways that we think about those income streams and how to build these income streams to last as long as you do?
I think with the remainder of the show, we ought to go back to Bob and Carol and really give a concrete example so they can see how we think through this.
Love it.
And so you think about Bob and Carol, they thought that they were going to need about $5,000 to retire. That's what they were spending prior to their retirement. But when we factored in inflation, we said, Bob and Carol, you really need about $6,000. So we said at retirement, we're going to build a plan for you that you need $6,000 in retirement. And so to set the stage, Bob has Social Security. Carol was concerned that she wouldn't have any Social Security, but she could utilize some of Bob's portion of his based off of what's called spousal income. So Bob had $2,865 for Social Security. Carol had another $1,532. So that, what does that equate to? It equates to $4,397. Now, if you take the difference between $6,000 and $4,397 that they need in retirement, they've got a shortfall of about $1,600, $1,603 to be exact. That is a significant gap that needs to be filled. And it really highlights the importance of having multiple streams of income. Because if you're just relying on Social Security, you're not going to have enough when you factor in inflation. So Ryan, what was the next step that we did once we looked at that shortfall of $1,600?
We always look at how do we make sure that shortfall, that gap is taken care of. And, one of the ways that you think about that, what is a good place of reliable income? It's the annuity companies. The insurance companies have been doing this for 150, 160 years. They've been just paying out checks. You think of Social Security. Social Security is just a big annuity payment. Pensions are an annuity payment. Well, how about creating your own private pension? That can be done with an annuity. Go back to this example with Bob and Carol. If they're $1,603 a month short, you times that by 12, that's $19,236. Well, what if we were to go out and take some money, some capital, this right around 450, 480,000, somewhere in that range, build a guaranteed income stream, put on one of these healthcare doublers on it to help them later on. But now we've got an income stream when they retire that's going to be just like this pension that lasts as long as they do. So now they don't have to worry about what's happening in the stock market, if it's going up and down. That's just one way that you could solve it. You could also solve it, by some dividend paying stocks. You could say, hey, I'm going to take that money and I'm going to allocate it into real estate. There's all these different examples, but Tyson, here's what we love. I've never had any client complain about the guaranteed income that just keeps being auto deposited into their account every month. In fact, most of the families that we serve, that's one of their favorite parts of their plan, because it doesn't happen who wins the election. Doesn't matter what's happening on Wall Street. It's just an automatic deposit into their account. And the only way you can do that is an annuity. And so don't be afraid of the word annuity. Get the facts. You see all this advertising like, I hate annuities and so should you. Well, get the facts. Understand it. That's the importance of working with fiduciary that can help you design that. And Tyson, there's I think another thing that people really need to pay attention to, and that is, what if I have not saved enough money?
Right.
Because the reality is most Americans spent it and they didn't save it. And so, we talk about, okay, it's nice to build 3 income streams, but what if I only have $200,000 saved for retirement? Well, I can see by listening to this, there's lots of different challenges. And so we talk about being open to look at every single option that's available out there. And, that's one of the things that we do, Tyson. All progress starts by telling the truth. People hate the word annuity. Many people hate that word, but we talk about here's the things that it can do. Another one of those dirty words is reverse mortgage. Let's just talk for a second here. If you didn't save enough money, how can a reverse mortgage possibly help you in this scenario, Tyson?
Well, for a lot of people, Ryan, you're right. They hear the word reverse mortgage and they say, absolutely not. A reverse mortgage, I'm not going to be able to save my home. It's going to go to the government. They're going to take it away from me. It's not going to be a resource. Well, a lot's changed in 15 years, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. And for a lot of people, this would become their final thing that they would look at. But regardless, being open to all options is a big deal. And what the amazing thing about a reverse mortgage today is you have the opportunity to take some of your equity out of your home as a lump sum, as a home equity line, or even as a monthly payment. You've got these different options. And the amazing thing about that is you have control. And we don't have anything to do with reverse mortgages. And you need to make sure that you talk to a competent professional. We can point you in a direction if you need to. But again, this is all about control of your resources. This is another tributary that a lot of people don't think about in retirement, because they say, I want to just hold on to this and I want to control it. When in reality, if you need another tributary, that's another place that you can tap as an income stream that you can have. And it doesn't even matter if you've got, let's say that your home is worth $500,000, and let's say that you live for another 20 years, and by the time that you get both of you pass, that there's now $600,000 that is on the mortgage. The kids would be able to sell the home, and whatever's remaining, the government takes care of. So there's all of these different options you've got that you may not understand.
I want to bring this back to Bob and Carol. We identified that Bob and Carol had a $1,600 a month shortfall, or basically $20,000 a year, right?
Right.
Well, what a lot of people are dealing with is they haven't paid off their mortgage yet. So let's say that your mortgage payment was $200 a month, or $2,000 a month, excuse me, and that $400 a month of that $2,000 were property taxes and insurance. If you have a reverse mortgage, you still have to pay your property tax and insurance, of course, right?
Sure.
But let's say that's $400 a month just for simple math, and property taxes and insurance. So if they're one of the ways that a reverse mortgage can be really helpful is if they did a reverse mortgage, which simply eliminated the mortgage payment. Now, instead of having to pay off the debt, they do a reverse mortgage, which eliminates the monthly payment. And then the payment, instead of going down, the balance goes up, like you mentioned in that earlier example. But for Bob and Carol, that was one way that they could have just fixed their income shortfall during retirement. And even bigger,
That's right.
If I have to get $2,000 a month to make my mortgage payment, remember, you have to make more than that. So if you're in a 33% tax bracket, you have to earn $2,600, $2,660 a month to pay for that mortgage. So this is another tax way that you can, if you just eliminate the mortgage payment, you don't have to earn that $2,660 anymore. That makes a big difference in your income streams. That's just one example, so Bob and Carol, that's one way they could fix it. They could, instead of doing an annuity, they could take the money and they could invest that into something else that creates income streams for later on. Maybe they do a deferred annuity, or maybe they do some real estate. These are ideas that you're not going to get on the general media, right? You're not going to get when they're pitching Wall Street or they're pitching Bitcoin or whatever they're pitching. But as a fiduciary, the reason why we call this podcast Retirement Solutions, the podcast, is because we need to talk about all the solutions, and we need to talk about it in a way that makes sense. And that's our goal that we're doing on the podcast, right, Tyson?
That's right. So as you can tell from all of the different things that we've talked about today, that planning for retirement can be complex, and you don't have to go alone. Go to a fiduciary, whether it's us or somebody else. Go talk to a financial fiduciary who's going to give you all of your options to navigate these challenges that we've talked about, and create a plan that is customized to you. And just think about it in those same terms that our dad talked to us about, in protecting those water sources and making sure that you've got enough to build a great plan in retirement where that water flows into that reservoir. So remember, retirement doesn't happen without a plan. That plan is the B.O.S. Retirement Blueprint. And we just hope you have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solutions Podcast with Tyson Thacker and Ryan Thacker. If today's episode inspired you to plan for retirement, go to bossretirement.com/podcast to receive a complimentary B.O.S. Retirement Blueprint. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another story to help you retire with confidence. B.O.S. Retirement Solutions is an independent financial services firm helping individuals create retirement strategies using a variety of investment and insurance products to custom suit their needs and objectives. Investment advisory services are offered by duly registered individuals through B.O.S. Retirement Advisors, B.O.S., an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. The information contained in this podcast is given for informational purposes only, and no statement contained herein shall constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. The information is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. You should seek advice on legal and tax questions from an independent attorney or tax advisor. Our firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government or any governmental agency.